Make sure to check out the Income Store live video stream of today's show right now at 560theanswer.com.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So the whistleblower's complaint has been released. Just read this 9-page complaint. Unfortunately for the complainant, so much has transpired since he sent this letter to Richard Burr, the chairman of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, and Adam Schiff, the chairman of the House Intel Committee, on August 12th, that it makes most of this moot. We're already discussing it.
The wind is out of the sail. President Trump released the transcripts of the phone call, the actual phone call yesterday, which really makes this a whole bunch of a nothing burger.
So I've received information, writes the whistleblower, I've received information from multiple U.S. government officials that the president is using the power of his office to solicit interference from a foreign country in the 2020 U.S. election. And it basically all revolves around the phone call and includes news reports. So that's not exactly inside information. Makes an additional allegation of U.S. officials seeking to, quote unquote, lock down the records of the July 25th phone call between Trump and Zelensky, including the word for word transcript. He took that to as underscoring that White House officials understood the gravity of what had transpired in the call. That's what he says. And then he just talks about ongoing concerns, Rudy Giuliani's involvement, meetings with Zelensky and various Ukrainian figures, including as well as the U.S. Special Representative for Ukraine negotiations, Kurt Volker, who was mentioned specifically by Giuliani as somebody that he's been reporting to.
But on the first, he says, I was not a direct witness to most of the events described. However,
right.
I found my colleagues' accounts of these events to be credible.
So this is what I said when we were talking to Senator Mike Braun. I mean, that's sort of what this reads as now, especially now because all this information is being made publicly available, and you've heard from so many of the principals. You've heard Giuliani. You've heard too much from Giuliani as far as I'm concerned. You heard from Trump. You heard from Ukrainian President Zelensky yesterday with Trump.
I think you read everything. So I think you read text. I'm sorry, but I don't want to be involved to democratic, open elections of USA. No, you heard that we had, I think, good phone call. It was normal. We spoke about many things, and so I think, and you read it, that nobody pushed me. Yes.
In other words, no pressure.
Nobody pushed me.
And if anything, look what the Democrats did to the president. And that's what President Trump mentioned yesterday.
If you take a look at the Democrats, they went down to see the president of Ukraine, and they asked him for all sorts of things, and don't go with the Republicans and stay with us, and like it's a political war. They shouldn't have done that. That should be an impeachable event, I guess, based on what you're saying. The Democrats just came out. They went down there, a group of people, some of whom I was dealing with on the gun issue, and they went down, put tremendous pressure on Ukraine. The president himself just came out with a statement saying,
yeah, so you understand.
And so I think more and more Americans are in Ukrainian President Zelensky's camp, which is they don't want to be involved in the U.S. election either.
I know, that's what he's like. Check, please.
But there is a choice to be made, lest we forget, and it's bigger than just Trump versus Biden. It's what we've talked about before on this show. It's, I would say, it's cultural Marxism versus founding principles versus America's promise. And in terms of an economic system, it's capitalism and free markets versus socialism. So I thought our next guest would be an ideal person to talk about this a little bit. Somebody, again, who's lived through the ravages of socialism. And it was interesting to note when President Trump specifically called out the Maduro regime in Venezuela during his speech at the UN General Assembly, the Venezuelan delegate was reading a book about Simón Bolívar as some sort of protest move. Yeah, Simón Bolívar, the great liberator. What's Maduro? But President Trump continues to relentlessly, with moral clarity, call out socialism and the thugs who subjugate their people under the auspices of creating heaven on earth. And frankly, the inability of the left in this country to speak with moral clarity about the Maduro regime, and obviously with the likes of Bolshevik Bernie to openly and notoriously promote socialism, it's dangerous stuff. And perhaps we don't take it as seriously as we should, at least some of us. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Julia Song. She is a conservative political activist and commentator, and she wrote a very compelling piece at evmagazine.com, EVIE magazine.com, How Socialism Failed Me as a Woman and Ruined My Country. Julia, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ben and Amy, for having me.
So tell us what happened to you and your family in Brazil when the political winds changed.
So when you have a society that's mainly ruled by socialist ideals, what they do is that they move away from the small business type of thriving environment. The small business begins that whole environment begins to be very regulated. The employment laws are incredibly insane. You see that happening in the U.S., where they're trying to raise minimum wage to they're always trying to raise it. I think the last that I heard was 15, but it might even be higher than that because the life is so expensive to live, especially in the cities that they settle in. They have their political settlements in. It's so expensive to live that they keep trying to raise the minimum wage. That puts pressure on the businesses. Then they tax the businesses. Then they overregulate the businesses, and it's really hard for small businesses to thrive. So the government becomes the biggest employer, and if you're against the government, then you don't have a government job. And so it becomes very hard in that sense. They put their people in. They put the people that they want employed in, and the rest of the population has to figure out how to get by.
When you're against the government, when you're not part of the ruling party, so we're talking in the context of the 2020 election, the idea of weaponizing the state to inflict punishment on political opponents. What happened to Trump, arguably, in 2016. And prior to, under the previous administration, and what, of course, the left is alleging President Trump was attempting to do with the Ukrainian president. But that's why I want to go to your experience, though, too. What happened to your family? Your mom was a professional, an attorney. What happened to your family, you and your family in Brazil, when the party to which she was affiliated fell from power?
So what happened was that she kind of knew what to expect. We just didn't know the fact that once you vote them into power, it's almost impossible to vote them out. So the situation lasted for way longer than it should have. It lasted for 6.
Julia? Did we lose Julia?
Oh, Julia, are you there? Hello? Julia, are you okay? Are you okay?
Got a zone. Here, we'll take a break and we'll try and pick up Julia.
The stories you need to know to start your day. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
When a company is ready to grow, it's important to have the right partner to support that growth. Choose a team backed by 100-plus years of combined experience in the staffing industry and the most trusted staffing service supplier. Choose Unistaff. Unistaff's flexible staffing solutions can help your business fill temporary, temp-to-perm, or direct hire employment and make the hiring process cost-effective and efficient. For temporary placement to handle specialty products requiring specific skill sets, workflow fluctuations, or to save on hire costs, Unistaff has the talent ready to take on the challenge. They can also connect you with their talented associates to provide temporary positions with the potential of full-time placement. And for direct hire, you know finding the right employee can be an unexpected, time-consuming task. Leading corporations partner with Unistaff to gain access to top candidates in a wide spectrum of industries specific to their needs. Focus on growing your business. Call Unistaff to handle the rest. Go to unistaffjobs.com. That's unistaffjobs.com.
AM 560, The Answer.
All right, Dan and Amy, we got Julia Song back. She's a conservative political activist and commentator. Julia, you're with us?
Hi.
Hey, sorry about that. I don't know what happened there, but I just want to pick up, or maybe reset and pick up your story about what happened to your mom and your family when the Conservative Party in Brazil fell out of power, the implications of that politically for you and your family.
Absolutely. So my mother, she was a well-known, in our state at least, conservative attorney. The economy got worse as time went by. She was not able to get a government job at all, and there were no other employers in the market. Inflation was getting out of control, violence was out of control, education was getting terrible. Any kind of health care that we had, any kind of everything that the government provided did not have any quality that you could hold on to. So in reality, there was nothing actually free. And the lifestyle became more expensive as time went by. So food, lodging, housing, all of those things were extremely expensive, yet the market did not have enough employers and enough stability to allow people to live to those standards. So high levels of poverty, we went into homelessness. And the thing is that this lasted for so many years, and we started asking each other, are you still voting for this government? Are you still voting? And people were like, no, we didn't vote, but somehow they kept getting elected. And so that's when we started looking into the government a little bit deeper to try to find the corruption in it. We did find it. We did have the socialist president impeached. We had her removed from office. And that is another valuable experience that I have, because I remember you were talking about it earlier. And we did have two presidents that went through the impeachment process here in the U.S., but we actually never had them removed from office. And when you have a president removed from office, the chaos that brings into our economic systems is just too much. We have China really close to catching up to us, and cannot allow ourselves to fall into the kind of recession that will happen to this country if we actually remove the president out of office, especially since he's doing so good when it comes to the economy and some of these other aspects.
Yeah, and it was amazing that you said that, too, because after the transcripts of the phone call was released, the Dow actually went up yesterday. Did you notice that?
Absolutely. I think that is very anti-American when you talk about removing a president out of office, when in reality, doing that will make so many Americans lose their jobs and the economy will go down. So I think that will be terrible for the American people. Why are we trying to do that with, again, like you mentioned, a nothing burger?
I also think people underestimate sometimes how bad things can get, and your experiences you recount in that piece I referenced. I mean, you went from your mom being the successful professional and attorney to being homeless.
Absolutely. My mother has 2 degrees. She had a business administration and a law degree. She was very experienced. She shouldn't have gone through that, but that goes to show you that if somebody who's doing great today, if somebody who has, their feet standing in the ground, they're good economically, if they're going from being well financially to becoming homeless, what could happen to the majority of the people? I mean, a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck. A lot of people don't have a lot of savings. So what will happen to those people in a state of socialism? People think, oh, it's not going to happen to me. Well, what happened to somebody who was way better off than most of the population. So you can imagine how people who didn't have savings, who didn't have all of that structure, how life was for them.
And of course, we've seen the same thing playing out in horrific ways in Venezuela in real time. How did you, just on a personal note, how did you ultimately make your way to America then from Brazil?
The decision to come to America was job related, but that was after I had already finished with my whole political scene movements, after I was already established and things were looking up. Then I came to America for my studies and my work. But, I just want to piggyback on what I was saying earlier, because I did remember an example. I was staying at somebody's house because we were homeless, so our family had to be split up. And I did stay at somebody's house. This person was a professor. I guess I shouldn't say a professor, a teacher. And she was known to make opposition to the government, the local government. She was known to make opposition to the mayor. And because she made opposition to the mayor before, the mayor was withholding her salary. So she didn't have any money. She couldn't buy food. She couldn't do anything. So then that's when I had to move from her place to another place, because she was basically in a state of misery because the mayor was actually withholding her salary.
Well, we're glad you found success and made your way to our country. Julia Song, conservative political activist and commentator. I'll tweet out that column I was referencing. Julia, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
If you're talking about it, Dan and Amy are talking about it. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
If you have pain, listen up. Dennis Prager here. You don't need to live in pain. Let me repeat that. You don't have to live in pain. Chronic pain is the worst. Whether it's from an accident or